This is Fearless Beauties, a podcast dedicated to developing voices of color in the beauty industry. We are talking to estheticians, skin specialists, and business owners to uncover best skin practices, tactical career tips, and ultimately, how we can create a better beauty industry together. I'm your host, Mary Nielsen.
And I'm your other host, Taylor Phillip.
All right, well, Taylor, here we are already on episode 4.
Yes.
And I think today we wanted to talk about that traditional lens that the beauty industry tends to focus on when they're advertising or marketing. And that lens is just really kind of glorifying, again, the Eurocentric idea of beauty, white, thin, youthfulness, just talking about why it is that way and then what can we do to change it?
Yeah, how can we normalize seeing Black and brown women and men on beauty advertisements? It's kind of crazy because I was at my internship yesterday and I was counseling one woman, and she is, I would say she's half Black, half Spanish, so she's multi-ethnic, and she is on the bigger side. And she was talking about conventional beauty, like women who are conventionally beautiful. And she was saying, well, yeah, I think I'm pretty, but I'm not as pretty as the women that are tall, lean with the long flowing hair. And she said it just like that. And I thought about what we've been discussing and kind of just like, the Eurocentric standard of beauty, like this woman who she believes she's beautiful. But she said, well, I'm not as beautiful as what other people say beautiful are. So that just kind of like threw me for a loop. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, because she's on the bigger side and mostly all of her family is skinny and lean. And then, of course, we're doing a podcast, so no one really sees what I look like. But I'm pretty skinny and I'm pretty lean. And she looked at me. She was like you. And I was like, oh, okay. She was like, well, you're not conventionally beautiful because you don't have the long flowing hair, but you are skinny and lean. So that's beautiful. I was like, oh, wow. And I kind of just like, what do I say here? So it's still going on, people. It's still going on.
Yeah, it made me think about the pressure that young girls feel to have to conform. And all these studies and statistics that show, how girls, when they reach that sort of like preteen age or early teens, where all of a sudden they just become so down on themselves. They become so self-conscious. And I think social media just continues to put out those images of things that are, and again, we go back to the white men that are programming our data, right? Oh, anyway, just looking back, I did enjoy looking back in history to see previous generations, centuries ago, what was considered beautiful. It was women who were voluptuous. It was, Now I know this is a podcast, but I can tell you that I'm a little bit on the larger side. So it was women that had more curvy figures and were more voluptuous. And I think that has to do with probably health, right? And wealth. I think there's a wealth stigma that sort of attaches to beauty. But if centuries ago you were fortunate enough to have enough to eat and could afford to have extra pounds, it must have meant that you were wealthy enough to be able to afford more food.
And that is kind of the opposite of what it is now.
Yes.
I would think, yeah.
Denying themselves food. Have you had to deal with anyone who has like bulimia or
I was just about
or anorexia?
Yes. Yesterday as well, which is absolutely crazy. I guess it was kind of in a way to prepare for this podcast today, but I had my last client of the day yesterday. She is Caucasian. How old is she? She's in her teens. She's Caucasian, but she's on a thicker side. So she has the wider hips. She was talking about how she has dealt with anorexia in her family. And she said that all of her siblings, she has brothers and sisters that are older than her. She's the youngest. They've all dealt with eating disorders. And she said that it's not because being a big family, money can be tight sometimes. But she said, no, it's not because of that. It's just because we were all kind of picked on for being skinny. And they're all like teenagers. Like I think the oldest is probably like my age, like 20 something, 26. It's just crazy how she was being picked on for being thick. She stopped eating. She said that before and after every meal, she would weigh herself. She wanted to stay within a certain weight. And this all started when she was around 10 years old.
Oh my goodness.
So this was like 6 years ago. Yeah, 6 years ago. So, and it's all because her friends and what she saw on social media and on TV were all skinny, white girls, just skinny. So she thought something was wrong with her. And then it doesn't help the fact that if you have your parents saying, oh, you're a little bit too big, or if you have doctors saying, oh, you're too big. And I think, and when I asked her, I said, so the doctor said you were too big? And she said, yeah, she said, I'm eating too much because I'm homeschooled and I don't get enough activity. And I was like, has it even gone to the point where doctors think that being a little bit bigger is unhealthy? When honestly, it's not.
No, it reminds me of a conversation I had with our medical collaborator here at the school. Mm-hmm. She's a nurse practitioner, and she's African American, and she was talking to me about the white ideal of beauty and that the weight and height standards were set by white men. Mm-hmm. And there is no way that if she was at the weight that they say that she should be for her height, she would be sickly. She would be so that it's a completely unattainable. Some of it is just completely unattainable images.
Mm-hmm. And I think you said the word glorifying earlier or just now. That's what it is. Like people are glorifying. Like if you look at models, they're literal sticks. I think I saw like a documentary about Victoria's Secret models. They literally like starve themselves because that is what society has told them is beautiful. For you to literally, I want to see your ribs. I want to see your hip bone. You know what I mean? And that makes other people who are genetically bigger just feel down on themselves, like they're not beautiful. So it sucks. It really does suck.
I also was reading an article last week about, she's an actress. I don't even know her name. She's got blonde hair, and she's lost about 60 pounds in the last year. Anyway, that people are obsessed. She feels like the media is just obsessed with her weight loss, and that nobody really cares about her acting talent or brings up the fact that she's won awards and has any other kind of talent. They're just obsessed. Rebel Wilson, that's who it is.
Ah, okay, yeah, I know who that is.
Yeah, and she's lost about 60 pounds. Just deciding during COVID that she was going to eat differently and get committed to some exercise. And so she feels like that she's just being hounded by the media, and that makes me sad.
Yeah, I think the same goes for Adele. Adele is a singer, for anyone who doesn't know, and she has always been a thicker white woman. And I think it was a couple years ago, she put a picture out. She was cultural appropriating, but that's for another podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Let's not go down any rabbit holes today.
Okay.
But she was basically almost 100 pounds lighter, not lighter, but smaller than she was. And people were just so obsessed with her size. And just like Rebel Wilson, she just wanted to be healthier. But I didn't see anything wrong with it. But because she was always so big, It was just a huge thing, but in the media.
Well, and I think the media gets so focused. I've been watching the docudrama series on Monica Lewinsky and Bill Clinton, and how cruel the media was about her and her body shape. And I don't think she was grossly morbidly obese, someone who's morbidly obese, whose health is impacted by their weight, but she just was not thin. And it was this idea that a man in power, would even be attracted to her because she wasn't this ideal, or this, what our culture tells us is ideal.
Mm-hmm.
When do you see the LGBTQ community represented in ads that are, marketing some type of beauty product? Or do you see handicapped people? Or, although I did read of a company that signed their first Down syndrome, a woman with Down syndrome, to be a model.
I think I know exactly what you're talking about. And I think you did send me an article about they're starting to, what was it? Something with skin health and with Down syndrome, with people with Down syndrome.
Yes.
I don't remember. Yeah.
Yes, there's a new clinic in New York that's has just opened up, that's specifically dealing with Down syndrome skincare, because their skin it tends to be really, really dry and cracked, and it has a lot more incidence of like dermatitis and things.
But I think that's awesome that they're starting to branch out and do things like that, because it's not only, the white, thin, European, and also sexualized women and men that should be on beauty advertisements. It could be people of color, ones with disabilities, LGBTQ community, everyone.
Yes. Grace Strobel, that's her name. She's a model that has Down syndrome. And then there's another one. Her name is Madeline Stewart. And I think that it's affirming for those people and their families who I think sometimes feel, maybe is feeling shame the right word for feeling like you're not fitting in, to feel ashamed of.
Yeah, I think with like fear and doubt and all of those horrible words that kind of dampen your self-esteem, I think the underlying word is always going to be shame. Because it's always like, why not me? It's like, am I doing something wrong? So like when others see beauty advertisements and they don't look like those women and men, it's always what am I doing wrong? It's never what are they doing wrong? We're always blaming ourselves, like, oh, because they're advertising that is what people see as beautiful. Since I don't look like that, I must be doing something wrong, or my genes must be the wrong type of genes. It's honestly it's crazy. I think what the media should be kind of uplifting everyone, and I think it's starting to be better, but I think it's always done the opposite. Instead of uplifting, it's defeating a huge population.
I do think there are companies that are trying to change, or maybe it's not the companies. I think that as women move into more leadership positions in those kinds of beauty companies, so that they're not just solely managed by white middle-aged men, I think that they can have a particular awareness or more of a sensitization about trying to be more inclusive.
Yeah. And I think, not the only, but the one thing that pops to my mind is Fenty Beauty by Rihanna.
Yes.
I think she just changed the entire game. And you could easily say, oh, she's Black, so she's going to represent, brown and Black men and women, because it's been so underrepresented. I can't say that word. But no, if you see Fenty Beauty, if you see the website, if you see all the advertisements, it's the whole spectrum.
It's the full spectrum.
Yes, it's beautiful, and women and men of all shapes and sizes as well, not just of all skin tones, but all shapes and sizes. And I think that is just, that's what we need to see. But why does it take someone like Rihanna to do that?
If she had released Fenty Beauty without already being a celebrity,
Exactly.
would it have caught on? Or
Or would it have been like ridiculed? Like, what do you think you're doing?
yeah.
I do think that a part of it is because she's Rihanna, but at the same time, thank you, because geez, someone needs to get it out there. But I do wonder if there were entrepreneurs before her that did the same thing but just weren't noticed. So,
But Madam C.J. Walker, she was the first Black woman. She was ahead of Oprah, becoming a millionaire in the early 1900s by marketing to Black women, particularly with hair care things and then some beauty products. And she was a powerhouse.
definitely. I do remember doing a history project on her back in grade school. That's all I got.
Yes. Oh, no.
Yeah.
Well, when I was doing research for the Fearless Beauties book, that's where I first stumbled on her and was like, oh my gosh. But it's going to be a tiny rabbit hole. But is she mentioned in the current aesthetic textbooks? No.
Oh.
Her contribution is not there. And that's where, again, there's a hole in education.
You're right about that.
Yeah.
And I think it's always a why, like, why isn't it? And I think we could also ask, I think you mentioned, I think in every podcast so far this season, you've mentioned that the huge beauty companies are run by white men.
Yes.
So I think we could ask, why is the beauty industry still underlined by the tendency to want to please those men or society rather than please ourselves?
Yes.
Is it money?
No, I think it starts, Taylor, with those gender stereotypes that you learn just as a child. Girls are learning to please the boys. Girls are learning to.
Yep, definitely. I was just thinking that I don't think this is a rabbit hole, but of course my daughter is 2 and she's in the terrible 2s and she is absolutely driving me insane. She doesn't listen to a word I say. But when her dad came to town, it was nothing. She was like, Lauren, sit down. And she sat down. And it was, Lauren, did it, because she wants to please him. And I'm just like, what the heck? Like, I have to tell her 10 times to sit down, but you tell her once and she's like, I want to do whatever dad says. I want to make him happy. I'm like, huh. So, I think it has something to do with just wanting to please them, or it's kind of like an authority. I think we're taught generations to just, I guess men have always been the authority figure, I guess. Am I saying it right?
Well, I just finished reading this book called Drop the Ball by Tiffany Dufu, Dufu. And she talks about, it was such a good book, but she talks about how as a child she learned from her mother, who learned from her mother, who learned from her mother, right? That the women, these roles where the woman is going to take care of everything domestic in the house. But now also women are going to have it all because they're going to be working full time and they're going to have children and be, mothers. And so she's got a full-time executive job working as a corporate fundraiser where she's bringing in like $1 million contracts. She gets UPS to donate $1 million to this organization that she works for. She gets all these big corporate donors. So she's working this high level job, but at home, she's the one that does all the shopping, all the cooking, all of the household management of absolutely everything. Her husband has a high level job as well, but he goes to work and then he comes home and he sits on the couch and watches the game.
Yeah.
And she's the one she talks about her first day at work after maternity leave. She comes back and she's still breastfeeding, but they told her that she could pump during the day, but she doesn't have time to pump and her breasts are engorged and she's leaking milk everywhere. And she just starts bawling, crying with like, how am I going to manage being this perfect mother, this perfect wife, this perfect employee, and do all this stuff? And she finally realizes that it's pressure that she's put on herself to be perfect because of society, because of our culture's expectation of how women are supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And she tells some really hilarious stories about when she's called Drop the Ball because she intentionally starts dropping the ball at home so that her husband will pick it up.
Mm-hmm.
And she realized some of the things she's just never asked him to do things.
Right.
And so women learning to use their voice to say what they need and to ask for help rather than feeling like you have to do it all.
Mm-hmm. So basically saying that it's up to us to change the trajectory of women doing it all and men just working and coming home.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I think that women have to do that in terms of like beauty too. We have to like stand up and collectively as women, no matter what our skin color, but our age, our body type, our social economic status, and really
like vouch for ourselves.
Yes, exactly. Vouch for ourselves and teach it to the next generation.
Keep it going, because once we do that, then it will be on media, it will be on TV shows, it will be on everything. And I think that's when the younger generation will say, oh, this is normal. Like, this is normal to see, like those movies now where the woman is the executive. And then some movies you see where there's a stay-at-home dad. Like, let's normalize that too.
Yes.
Like, you will start to see stuff like that, and it won't be so new or like weird or awkward. No, it'll just be normal.
But I think that this is another thing that our culture has done, is that if you do see a movie where the woman is like the executive, she's always got like some type of personality flaw.
Right.
She's just a bitch, right? Where she can't, right? I think about Meryl Streep in her
Devil Wears Prada?
Devil Wears Prada, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Or even Viola Davis, where she's in that
How to Get Away with Murder,
right? Mm-hmm. They're in these powerful positions, but their personal life is just shatters.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we have to change that culture too.
Yeah, it's kind of like there's a mental health component. You just kind of have to, because it's all stemmed from, it's generational. So I think it's kind of, you have to normalize women being strong, having good mental health, and being successful. Like, you don't have to, like you said, be a bitch and be successful.
Now, when you grew up, was your mom the one that did everything?
Oh, yeah. My dad, he worked, but my mom was a stay-at-home. Well, actually, my mom worked until I was in like 5th grade, and then my mom and dad decided that my mom would stay home and be a stay-at-home mom until she started working again. I would say like 3 years ago. So it's been a while. But basically my whole life, I saw my dad make the money and my mom just took care of us, like did everything. But was her mental health good? No, it was not. It was not. So you kind of have to think about it. Like, us women, we do it because we feel like we have to. And we have to, like I said, vouch for ourselves and say like, okay, I'll stay at home, but I also want to, do my own business. I want to volunteer. I want to do other things. Like, you don't just have to stay home and take care of the kids. And I think you see that now. You see it a lot now, especially since COVID, where these stay-at-home moms, they have businesses, Etsy
Yes.
shops. They have it all because it's now being normalized that, no, I don't just have to stay at home and take care of the kids and do the housework. I can be my own boss too. And yeah, you're starting to see that a lot. You are starting to see that.
Yeah, I think
a
that
lot.
COVID has shifted things so that there's just more people are thinking out of the box, and there's more ways to do things and manage it.
But basically, like, how can we promote more diversity in the beauty industry? I think it's just, like we mentioned, vouching for ourselves and normalizing it, and just seeing us all as beautiful and
women supporting women, right? Women
yeah, definitely
coming forward and just supporting each other.
Yeah, and I think it's great to also have those men like Ralph Cole, our Fearless Beauties
Oh,
ambassador.
yes.
He talks a lot about men supporting women, and I just think that's just like absolutely incredible. I just love that. So yeah, it's that too. Because if more husbands and more boyfriends would be like, you know what, babe, you don't have to stay home, take care of the kids, do the housework, and that's it. If you want to, you can. But when I come home, I'm going to help you too. And I think we have to normalize that as well. Like, there's kind of, it's not a go to work and come home and that's it type of thing for men. I think they can take some of the pressure off of women as well. So it's kind of the women supporting women and men supporting women as well.
And then I think the next generation having kids grow up with equally invested parents, I think will make a huge change.
Definitely. So I think we talked about how we can promote more diversity in the beauty industry. But let's talk about the future. Like, well, not really the future, but what progress do you think has been made in the last 20 years in the right direction?
Well, honestly, I think there's been a lot. In 20 years' time, I think that our country has really made a shift, particularly in accepting LGBTQ. I think that it's probably been really since about George Floyd that people have, or Breonna Taylor, that wake up, right? That wake up of like, there really is racial discrimination. Right. And so I think that has shifted. And I think that there is some pressure as companies feel almost the political pressure to become more diverse. There's just a lot more people speaking up about it.
Yeah, there's like it's a fire lit up underneath their ass. Isn't that the term? I don't know. But there's been a fire. There's been a fire lit. They're like, oh, we have to do something. Like, this is a problem.
Yes.
Yeah, it's definitely a problem. But yeah, like you said, I think there's definitely been a change in the LGBTQ community. Unfortunately, it takes a lot of difficulty and discrimination and marginalization for, success in that area to happen, but it's happening. And I definitely see the LGBTQ people being recognized in the media and advertising in a positive way. I see that now a lot. I think Fearless Beauties has done a great job where we have talked more about transgender skin.
Yes.
I think a lot of our supporters love to hear about that. So, because it's a huge community. I think where you are, isn't it a huge community?
Oh, it's huge in the Portland area. Absolutely.
Yeah, and where I live in Orlando, it's huge too. So
when there are companies that do have, like, I think there's a company, Doesn't somebody have their first transgender model?
Yeah. Oh, who was it?
There's the first transgender model. And I think that people applaud that. And then that will make other companies feel like, oh yeah, we wanna get on that. Right? They want to be a trendsetter.
Oh man, and I remember when I was in Sephora one day and I saw it was a transgender model hanging up on the shelves. I don't think it was L'Oreal. I don't know why L'Oreal keeps coming to me, but I doubt it was L'Oreal. But it was just nice to see. But there's even like trans men and women at the top of, political positions now.
Yes.
It's absolutely amazing. So it's not just the beauty industry, it's all industries, and I think it's great.
Yeah, I think that as that becomes normalized and as you see more people with handicaps, I'm thinking back to, now I'm going to be dating myself, to the deaf actress that was, oh, goodness sakes. I think that she was a trendsetter for even being deaf and then appearing regularly on a television show. So that even though that show is really old, West Wing is what I'm thinking of. It becomes...
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But then when you start to see that seeping into our culture, seeping into television shows and movies, so that the person isn't just when they would have the token black person on a show.
Yeah.
So it needs to become normalized. So these people are not just kind of a stereotype caricature, but they are real people that have more depth to them.
Exactly. I love the way you put that. I don't think this is not who I was talking about, but Valentina Sampiao. She's Victoria's Secret's first transgender model and the first transgender model to appear in Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue. So that was in 2017.
Oh, so see?
Oh, 2020 actually.
Oh, 2020?
So never mind, 2020. So yeah, I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I think that if we see our culture sort of shifting in that direction and then people embrace it, and don't make it feel like, oh, this is just like a one-off weird thing, but really embrace it. I think that we will definitely see a faster culture shift.
Yeah. So I think we talked about now, we talked about the future, we talked about the past. Do you have anything else that you would like to talk about?
Oh my. Well, I think we should save it for our next episode.
Okay. So yeah, I think we basically hit all aspects of the traditional lens of the beauty industry and what we need to do to change it, what we need to do to continue to change it and normalize it for generations to come. And yeah, I think it's just about vouching for ourselves and just understanding that everyone is beautiful and there's no standard of beauty at all.
Yeah. Feeling empowered and feeling like you've got to stand up for yourself.
Can I say that we have to be fearless, Mary?
Okay. I like that.
We have to be fearless beauties.
That's perfect.
Yeah. So I think that kind of wraps up this episode. Just to plug in our social medias like I always do. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Fearless Beauties and also fearlessbeauties.org.
Yes.
And you can find me at Taylor Budgets and Mary at your.etsy.godmother. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hit us up. Stalk us. Not really. Don't do that.
Thank you for listening to Fearless Beauties, a show dedicated to elevating voices of color in the beauty industry. I'm your host, Mary Nielsen.
And I'm your other host, Taylor Phillip. Until next time, keep educating yourself, remember to stay open, and be fearless in the pursuit of creating a better, more inclusive world.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and leave us a review. Special thanks to my co-host Taylor and our producers at Quill Inc.